Hello and good morning. I just wanted to recap on what I was talking about yesterday. I've been talking about how I trained in EFT, which would be about 14 years ago now. And I was very medical model at the time, very blinkered. And I learned it on this course. And then I came away thinking, well, that's absolutely bonkers. There's hardly any evidence behind it. It's something I'll just not use because it's just not me. And then went on years later to find out that not only did I come across people that it had really, really helped, but also that in that time, research had been done, it had an evidence base behind it, and I'd been missing out on all that time. So I learned from it that not to really knock things, not to push them to one side and not believing them just because there isn't an evidence base at that time. So I maybe use a little bit of EFT in what I do now, but mainly if I think someone will benefit from it, I refer on to somebody else. And Eileen, who I'd like to introduce you to now, is one of those people. Eileen's an EFT practitioner, has been doing it for quite a few years now, haven't you, Eileen?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to really introduce you to Eileen and let her fill you in a little bit on what EFT is and what it can do, and what it's all about, really. So what can EFT help with? What's the most common things that you use it for, Eileen?
I think some of the most common things are probably been phobias and fears. So the ones that stick in my mind are fear of flying, very common. Fear of spiders, that's really common, especially this time of year, autumn in England, where they're all coming indoors.
They are.
But yeah, fear are anything that's holding people back in life. Fear of public speaking and fear of driving. So mostly those, but it can be used for a lot more than that.
It's a lot around feelings, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah.
it's not just emotional freedom technique. It is often referred to as tapping, isn't it?
Yeah, tapping's like a sort of umbrella term for a whole field of energy work therapy. So there's various different forms of that there, and EFT was first developed by somebody called Gary Craig, who was actually an engineer. He did have a background and knowledge of energy work, but he wasn't particularly a psychologist or anything like that. But he was really interested in the way the body works and the way memories are stored. And he developed EFT, but it's just generally called tapping. But there's a few different forms of tapping therapy around.
So how does it work?
Well, Gary Craig described it as, anytime we get a negative emotion, it's because there's a disruption in the way that energy flows through the body. And when we talk about energy flowing through the body, we're kind of referring to the meridian energy system. So that's something that's really derived from Chinese medicine. So it's sometimes called an emotional form of acupuncture, because acupuncture also works on the meridians. But instead of using needles, like with acupuncture, we tap on certain energy points as well. And these energy points are connected with specific emotions where you feel them in the body, which is like really interesting. That's one of the things that really interested me about it, is that there's meridians where you can expect to find anger and different sorts of anger associated with different body organs. So it can get quite complex, but EFT is a way of accessing that energy through 14 major of these energy circuits that run through the body. So you don't have to spend 5 years learning all the hundreds and thousands of them. We just work with 14 of the major energy circuits or meridians. So it's kind of a combination of an approach through ancient Chinese medicine, but also modern psychology. It's kind of a mix of the two. But it's all about, the more free flowing this energy is, the more empowered you feel really, and the more healthy you are.
So would you have to memorize all 14 of those points, and what do you do with those points?
Okay, it's helpful to memorize them, but there are only 14, and they are sort of on the hand, on the head, on parts of the body, but all places that are sort of really accessible, so you haven't got to sort of bend down and start tapping on your feet. So there's the side of your hand and fingernails, places on your face, and what we do is a very, very gentle tapping. So it isn't sort of, you haven't got to hit yourself really hard. It's a light tap, and you might just tap 6 or 7 times on one point, while at the same time we're focusing mentally on the issue or whatever it is that we're working on. So if it's a fear of spiders, we try and be as concise as possible on what the problem is. So there's usually different aspects to a problem. So for example, if somebody's got a fear of spiders, it might not be just a fear of spiders, it might be the fact they really don't like the hairy legs, or they really don't like the way they suddenly run quick, or they really don't like the way they're up on the ceiling and could land. There'll be something very specific. So there's the more specific we can be, the more effective it is really. But at the same time, it is possible to use EFT without sort of lingering on all the negatives. There's also ways now of using EFT where we can go straight to the positive outcomes that we want and focus on those as well. So it's quite interesting the way it's developed over the years, and different leaders in the field have developed just different ways of using it, really. And at the end of the day, it's a self-help tool, which is sort of one of the reasons I came into it. So I was looking for a self-help tool.
Yeah, it's quite often how a lot of therapists get into different techniques, isn't it, and practices.
Yeah.
So that's really good. Thank you, Eileen, for explaining that. I just wonder, before we finish, have you got an example that you can give us of where you've used it and there's been something that's particularly stood out or something particularly successful that you can just let us know kind of how it worked and what it worked on?
Yeah, I think one of the ones that sticks out most in my mind is a lady she had a bad experience driving a car on a motorway when a lorry pulled out on her as she was overtaking at quite short notice. So it was quite a scary incident for her. And after that, she had a real fear of motorway driving, and up until that point, she'd spent a lot of time going on yoga retreats and things up and down the country and travelling to Wales and different places. So not being able to drive on motorways was a big life challenge. So we did some EFT on actually that all her feelings and anxiety and worries around what it was that was stopping her from getting behind the wheel and so really focusing on the fears, and tapping as we focused on them. And what happened for her is that the charge, or the I suppose we said the charge of the fear, or the height of the fear, kind
The
of softened,
intensity.
because that's exactly the word. Yeah, the intensity changed. It's not that she suddenly started thinking, oh, that's fine, I can just leap in my car and drive anywhere. But what happened over time was this gradual softening of the fear, and different thoughts coming in that made her think more positively than focusing on the negative. So I often like to think of EFT as helping us separate the voice on this shoulder, which is the self-critic, and the one that's always going, oh no, you can't do that, or oh, you're not good enough for your dent, or no, don't do that. And then the voice on this shoulder that is your cheerleader that goes, yeah, you can do that. And in the course of an EFT session, we kind of get this voice on this shoulder going into the background and actually getting out argued by the positive voice, which then becomes the stronger voice. And it changes the whole energy around the situation. So over a period of probably a couple of weeks, we did a few sessions in her home, sort of tapping on what the concerns were. And I also got out with her and went in a car with her while she drove, and we did longer and longer stretches of motorway each time, so that by the time we got to the third time out, and I'm not tapping on her while we're driving or anything like that, it was more,
Keeping it
more
safe.
a bit of moral support really, and just being there for her. But by the end of those sessions, she was pretty comfortably pulling onto the motorway and being able to overtake lorries and just get on with her life again. So it's not that she didn't suddenly lose all sense and pull out in front of lorries. So there's still that sensibility there. Let's be careful, because we're on a fast moving traffic. But she hadn't got that block anymore, and just because that made such a difference in her life, and she was such a delight to work with. That's one of the ones that just sticks in my mind. But that's a kind of nice example of what you can do with EFT.
Brilliant. Thank you, Eileen. It's been really good talking to you.
Thank you,
Eileen. Do you want to tell people where they can find you if they would like any more information?
Yeah, I think the best place to get in touch with me is through Acorn Natural Health Centre in Hena, where I'm based. And yeah, we always do a free consultation beforehand so that you can have a chat and just ask some questions to make sure it is the approach for you, or whether something else might be more appropriate, like, for example, hypnotherapy or maybe another talk therapy. So the first thing to do is book a consultation, and then we'll take it from there with you.
Fabulous. So that's acornnaturalhealth.co.uk.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Eileen. Take
Okay,
care.
thank you, Sally. Take care. Bye. See you soon.
Bye-bye.